Welcome to Becoming and Belonging, a journey of identity and culture. I'm your host, Amy Huggins from Ascension Wellness. Each week, we embark on a journey of discovering who we truly are, navigating the nuance of identity and culture, and learning what it means to belong in our own skin and in the world. Many of us can confuse our professional roles with our identities, especially in a culture that values performance and external accomplishments. We might self-abandon thinking that we're not good enough somehow, and we might seek validation or seek to validate ourselves through our careers or through our job titles. Some of us are even addressed by a job title or by an educational accomplishment as if that's who we are. Please welcome my guest, Cindy Brockway. Cindy is a compassionate advocate for mindful living, dedicated to helping individuals find inner peace and find fulfillment by breaking free from stress, perfectionism, and external expectations. Drawing on her background in education, holistic wellness, and personal resilience, Cindy empowers courageous individuals to reframe pressures into positive forces, fostering balance, joy, and clarity. As the founder of the Courage Hub, Cindy provides practical tools and online courses that inspire lasting change, cultivate courage, and create space for calm in today's demanding world. Through her boundaries work, Cindy helps others reclaim their time, focus, and energy, enabling them to support and uplift others without sacrificing their own well-being. Cindy's approach is rooted in neutral thinking, offering a clear path to contentment and sustainable personal growth for those seeking to thrive in every aspect of life. Cindy, welcome to the show.
Hello and welcome. I'm so glad to be here. All right. I am, like you said, I am all about mindful living. And now, it's a big difference from the way it was when I was in the thick of it and working as a, highly driven professional and pouring into everyone and everything when we juggle all those different hats that we juggle as a mom and a career person and even a caregiver in many instances. And I'll tell you, it really took a toll on me. So now I focus a lot on helping other people just reconnect to their purpose and their vitality and learn how to thrive without sacrificing their energy and happiness.
Without sacrificing their energy and happiness, so often we are led to believe that we have to choose. It's got to be what is best for me versus what is best for others. And if I'm choosing what's best for me, then I must be sacrificing. We tend to think of it as selfish somehow, or
hmm
doing something wrong. Tell me more
Yeah,
about that.
and the thing is, and I was raised that way, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
that from a religious standpoint, I guess, Jesus, others, and you. So in order to get joy, it had to be Jesus first, others, and then you are the last one. And it was taught that way. And I have learned in my own life and in working with others that we really need to reframe what that looks like because it doesn't have to be in that specific order. I do feel like there is a balance. It's not either or. And you mentioned that. And I'll tell you though, in a lot of corporate jobs, it is either or. And, that if you want to get up and get ahead, you are going to have to sacrifice much of what you would like to do as a personal person outside of the workplace. And we need to reframe what that looks like and stand firm, not necessarily being rude or not being a team player, because I've been accused of not being a team player too, but just gently standing your ground so that you can maintain your energy and happiness because that's what radiates in everything you do. And on the contrary, if you are stressed, worn out, frazzled, you also become that radiates out of you too. And I don't want people to get to the point of disillusionment and just giving up when it just takes a few tweaks. And I'm not saying it's super easy, but just reframing things can really help empower us to take our circumstances as they are in this world of all humans and be able to fine tune it in a way that not only meets the needs of the people that we are serving, but also keeps our own needs in mind and attended to.
Yeah, wow, you said so much. That was just such a juicy bit. And one of the first thing that came to mind as you were talking about that, you mentioned the corporate world. The only two jobs I was ever fired from were in the corporate world because, like you just mentioned, I was told that I was not a team player. And what that looked like in my instance, I was horrified. Like, I'm like a workhorse. How in the world is it even possible for me to be fired? Because I was so on board. I was such a team player, but I would not engage in dirty sales tactics and brown nosing. I treated everyone equally, and that was the problem. And I got sales, but I didn't get them in the way that my coworkers did. And so the assumption was, well, if I just got on board and did things the way they did, I would get more sales,
Hmm.
which
Yeah.
that whole structure of it's not okay to be different. It's not okay to exercise critical thinking or, God forbid, empathy. But we have to follow this tried and proven way of doing things. And we have to own that as our identity and thinking that that's who we are, part of which means putting others first, can feel like corrosion, like on your
Mm-hmm.
soul.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it happens over time. You get involved and you're excited and you're wanting to do your best and you're putting your best foot forward. That's what we high achievers do. But over time, it starts to erode you at your own foundation because they are, like you said, trying to fit everybody into a certain mold and do it a certain way. And the role of, you and your own uniqueness, they don't want to hear it.
Right.
They and it can cause problems, and it is definitely an art, I think, to figuring out how to explore strategies for taking responsibility for yourself without really kind of alienating people in the other on the other side of the fence.
Right, that would be an art, maybe a little blending of art and science. So what does that look like? How do you do that?
Well, it's through, to me, small mindful steps. Um, and I've found that we need to, first of all, be okay with the idea of exploring our identity and understanding that, our self-image has been mm, pushed on us. So the way people see us, the way we see ourselves, especially from when we're young as we grow older, we see ourselves the way our parents saw us, or the way our teachers saw us, or the way our employer sees us. That's how we see ourselves because that's what's constantly being fed back to us. And being able to put some of that aside and really explore what you are and who you are and your own identity, uh, it opens up a lot of doors,
Mm.
and it really helps alleviate guilt because you can't figure out why on earth you're just not fitting in all the way, or whatever it might be, with you have a little bit of friction going on there. Pretty soon, when you understand yourself better, you understand why it feels icky, you understand how you can just tweak it a little bit and it can be a lot more acceptable to you. And so it's just tiny steps and making tiny shifts in different aspects of your life that are going to make a difference because we are whole beings, as you know. So it's not just our relationships that we need to work on or just our circumstances, get a new job that's going to fix everything. Not necessarily. But it also includes, our belonging, how we fit in the whole scenario of things. And then, of course, our own bodies, taking care of our own selves. So it's kind of multifaceted. And it involves setting boundaries and, just just getting clear on what you do. Clarity is a great big thing. I just recently hosted a set of clarity cohorts, and we went through the aspect of how is it that you can get clarity. And it really starts with figuring out what are those triggers. That's why we're all, feeling like we don't know what's going on, or we're lost, or we're confused, or we're unhappy. Got to figure out what's triggering that and then go from there. And it takes a lot of self-reflection, I think. And in the workforce, they want you to reflect and look, and they look at the numbers and the stats and what your sales are like, how many calls are you making? Like when I teach lessons as an educator, and we have to reflect on how the lessons went, how did the kids score on all that stuff, and it's all a reflection of me, supposedly, my energy and my abilities. So we need to take that reflection and turn it inward and figure out how that is going to impact us moving forward. And I think one of the big things, Amy, is going from our strengths as opposed to, they always want you to say, well, you're not doing this right. Let's try this. Let me get you to some training so you can do it more like us. You know what? Let me go from my strengths, and I think you'll see a much more vibrant person, a much more vibrant employee.
Oh my goodness. You just described this beautiful progression, this whole journey. There is a quote, I can't for the life of me remember who said it, but I ironically just read it again this morning. This says something that I am not who I think I am. I am not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am.
Mm-hmm.
So our self-perception, the way you said it, I think that it's put on us is that, right? We see ourselves reflected in other people, but we think that we are understanding what the other person sees in us. But
Mm-hmm.
really, we're just kind of going into that meaning making, and that's perfectly natural. Every child does it, and that's where the whole self-perception journey starts, is in early childhood. And if mom or dad is frustrated with us, we're going to make meaning out of what that is, unless they're clear, right? Which adults are seldom clear. Adults, we don't always know how to be clear. And so if mom or dad is upset and not clear and telling us, honey, this has nothing to do with you, then of course we think it has everything to do with us.
Mm-hmm.
And then you add in, another instance and another instance and another adult, and maybe there's some dysfunction going on and it just starts piling up. And so we go through life never really knowing who we are to some degree. So you talked about the word triggers, part of that self-reflection piece is learning what your triggers are. And then it sounds like from there, you're talking about making those small tweaks. Did I summarize all that?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And, it's interesting. I did a post in my Facebook community a couple of days ago, and I asked people, how many of you as a child or even a young adult were taught what to do with stress? And every single person, I mean, I got lots of feedback on it. We don't teach our children what to do. We tell them what to do. We don't teach them how to think through it and make their own determination, or, the skills for them to be able to protect their own identity.
Right.
We protect it for them, or we're the ones that's tearing it down, you
Exactly.
know, in what we've said to them. So it's just one of the key aspects of protecting your identity is to actually figure out what it is, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a big part of my journey. Many years ago, I asked my mom one day, I said, why don't you believe in me? Why don't you think I can, that I'm competent and I can accomplish my dreams? And she said, well, it's not that I don't believe in you, but I don't want you to be hurt. And I said, okay. So you're worried that the world is going to hurt me, so you're going to tear me down first before they have a chance to hurt me. And she said, well, yeah. And that just made all the sense in the world in her mind.
Hmm.
She was trying to be a loving mother. She was trying to protect me from pain by inflicting pain. Mm,
And that's not uncommon.
right.
They want you to learn from the school of hard knocks. I learned this way and you're going to learn this way.
Yeah.
And I've seen a shift in parenting skills over the years. It's kind of cyclical in a way,
Mm,
how parenting, but it's also based on what's going on around us. It's based on the literature that, was available when I was a kid and the literature that was available when you were a child, and what different doctors were saying. And it's so key to know that our self-image is just an idea.
mm,
You know, it is an idea that someone has put in our head. It's a mental picture and it's a product of what we've learned.
mm,
And I want us to be able to put this into action. So instead of just sticking with this idea that someone else wrapped up and gave to me,
yeah.
I want us to be active, taking responsibility for our own happiness and all the facets that come into that, the positive, the negative, the neutral, and just really reinforcing acceptance of who we are, the good, bad, and ugly, because that's who we are.
Mm,
You know, we do have things. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have people, and I read somewhere that you make a decision and you're 50% going to get it right and 50% going to get it wrong, because there's lots of trial and error in life. But that's what's happened when you're in motion.
mm.
And that's where the growth happens, though. You know,
Very
if you
much.
just stick with that static self-image that you were given long ago or that your boss has tried to put on you, um, you're going to stagnate. And we don't want that. We want people to be able to be happy and to be able to lead with their well-being as opposed to leading with their damaged self-image.
Mm, exactly. Leading with your well-being. And, you've talked about self-acceptance as the foundation.
Hmm.
How do we come to that place of self-acceptance?
Well, I think that is an ongoing dance.
Hmm.
We are always, because we are changing and evolving every single day, learning, growing, and glowing, I call it. And we learn, and every time you get into a new situation, which is nearly every single day, whether it's a small situation or a big, massive thing that just happened in your life that you weren't expecting, and you have to learn how to cope, how to be flexible, how to lean in. And sometimes I think because of the way we were raised and the way other people did it, it's either or.
Mhm.
And you got to get out of that black or white thinking because in order to accept what's going on in life, you need to challenge those things that are happening in there and see, okay, how can I take this gift that I've been given, whether I like it or not,
Mhm.
take this and use it and move forward with it. And it's not a matter of fighting it and I don't want it. That's what happens a lot of times, I think, and even in our jobs and in our relationships, it gets to a point where we fight back because we can't take it anymore.
Mhm.
It's I feel like it's because we haven't been open enough to, at the very beginning, when we feel that that disproportionate or discord of knowing how to deal with it
Right.
and learning how to deal with that and learning how to accept when things are not going to be 100% your way, and that's okay,
Mm.
you know. Then that's where that self-acceptance piece comes in, and I think one of I feel like there's five things to protect your identity.
Hmm.
And self-acceptance is a big piece of it. But you first of all got to embrace the whole you. Like I said, all facets of you. And then you've got to kind of, when you think about self-acceptance, you want to protect your own identity. And people don't often do that. They try to go with the flow.
Hmm.
And that is nice. It makes things for smooth. But if you want to be who you are and you want to stand out, then you need to create that inner harmony and clarity that's going
Mhm.
to help you shine. And that's what self-acceptance is really, I think, is when you get to a place of inner harmony and clarity, and that's where the true happiness comes in, and then you go from there.
Wow. And that sounds very powerful. And when we're talking about setting that foundation, it really, my head goes in two different directions at the same time. So on the one hand, using the building, playing with that building analogy, before we lay a foundation, some excavation has to be done first. And we have to get in there. Maybe that's that original self-reflection piece where we're really looking deep and going deep and seeing what's what and figuring out, okay, what is mine versus what have I been told is mine, and start to kind of suss that out. And then you reach a point where you're ready to really lay that foundation, and so then we build on top of it. So my question to you is twofold. What is that original excavation process that gets us to the place where we're able to lay the foundation? And then what are we building on top of that foundation?
Right. And I like how you've said that about that foundation. And a lot of times we stay where we are because we don't want to break up that foundation
Yeah.
and because we feel like we're starting from scratch or whatever. But sometimes you have to break up that foundation and figure out what is yours, what is not yours. And I think an important part of laying a new foundation is getting to the place through self-reflection. There's a lot of different I like mindfulness strategies and things that you can utilize that get you to the point where your happiness is not dependent on anybody else
Mm,
or any other thing that's going on around you. If you can get that internal happiness and that internal harmony, then build a foundation and it's not going to crumble because you're the one that put it there. It's all your strengths right there. And that's where we are able to grow from the bottom up.
mm,
You know, like you said, we got to clean out all the stuff that was put in there ahead of time that really isn't who we are. And it takes time to learn that.
yeah.
And you learn that when you go through different stages. You know, as a teenager, you learn. As a young adult, you learn. When you start having kids, wow, that's a lot different than what I was taught when I was a kid. And
Yes.
then when you're, advancing up that career ladder, you find out really quickly what things are necessary for your foundation and what things you really don't want in that foundation.
How do
Did
you
I
get,
answer your question?
you did. Thank you. Thank you. How do you get to that point where you can start to recognize like something comes up and okay, that's me, or something comes up and oh, that's not me. I can let that go. But how in those beginning stages, how do you start to recognize what's what?
Wow, that is kind of the deep question, and the answer is not just a single answer. It
Hmm.
is a way of being able to pick out. Uh, you almost have to start from a place of discomfort.
Mm,
So you look in and see what it is that's causing you to feel uncomfortable, and then you go from there. And when you think about things that that are impacting your growth, and you know you cannot continue this way anymore. For me, it ended up being medical leave. And I got to a point where everything that I was doing all along, trying to follow the leader, trying to do the best I could, it was not working, and my foundation crumbled. And I found out that I needed to get to a place where I could feel like I was in control and I had a calm perspective. And I think what happens is there's so much busyness going on or procrastination. To me, it's one or the other. We get to a place where we are just spinning our wheels.
Mhm.
We're either working our tails off and coming up with the same problems, or we just give up and we don't even try. So you got to learn to recognize some of these patterns. And I think that's where it starts at the very beginning. And that's why I recommend that we start by looking at our triggers. I don't mean necessarily things from our past and like post-traumatic triggers. I mean situations, recurring situations, maybe certain people, maybe it's certain responsibilities that we've been given that continually bring up that negative or doubt into our situation. Start recognizing what those patterns are.
Right.
Because once you recognize the things that are triggering you and that kind of put you into a self-sabotage mode, even though you don't know it,
Yep.
that's when you can start moving forward. And sometimes, it can be, and it just takes, I think, some give and take, thinking, talking, discussing. A lot of people are able to read some of these self-help books and they think, oh, yeah. You hear it from someone else and it seems to make sense.
Mhm.
And once you get a grasp on what that is, then you are able to move forward. Before that, like I said, you're spinning your wheels and you end up without being able, you end up being disillusioned, depressed, maybe ill.
Mhm.
There's all kinds of things that manifest itself when we are not in a place of self-acceptance.
Right. It's almost like fumbling around in the dark. We're not really sure where we're going. We're not really sure which direction we came from. We're just kind of feeling and stumbling and fumbling. And, one thing that you said was you transitioned and your foundation crumbled. And I wonder, would you say that when we experience, because I think we all experience our foundation crumbling at different times, would you say that that's a good indicator that we are not living in authenticity and self-acceptance?
Yes, I would. And when we talk about that foundation and as far as the building scenario that we mentioned, it's because we have put a lot of our our um, oh, I can't think of the word, but we are seeking validation from other places.
Right. So then we're
So
putting
it's
all of that
ex
external validation on our foundation that was not built to withstand that sort of pressure.
Exactly, exactly. And that's what happens. There are, different things that different people deal with. Sometimes it's situational stressors, sometimes it's emotional stressors, sometimes it's cognitive stressors, just the way you think about yourself. But
Mhm.
there's a lot of different things that build that foundation, and being able to suss it out, like you said, and figure out how you're going to move forward with that. Break that cycle, break that foundation up and start with a foundation of peace and calm
Mm,
and go from there. And that's what I tell my clients. I said, you're going to start with where you are right now.
right.
Because if you look at the big picture, it is too overwhelming.
Yes,
So, and you get frustrated and you feel, you know, you get triggered all over again. So you
exactly.
just start with where you are, one block at a time, one brick at a time when it comes to that foundation. And to me, the daily rhythms or routines that we put in place
Mhm.
are those steps, those building blocks. Putting those, I call them anchor moments, and it's it fits right in with that scenario of the foundation, because you have to anchor your foundation in order for it to stand
Yeah.
the test of time.
Exactly. And so now what I'm hearing is, okay, we recognize the patterns in our life and start breaking up those patterns that are not ours, that are not authentic to who we are. But then we can build in new patterns on purpose that do reflect who we are and do support who we are.
Yes. And I like how you said that, new patterns on purpose.
Yeah,
We do it with intention.
exactly.
And I think a lot of times, and you've probably seen this too with people, they're just going by the seat of their pants,
Right.
and trying to survive the best they can. And we're saying, you and I both are saying, no, let's be intentional with that. Let's do it on purpose.
Yeah.
Instead of accidentally being happy today, you're going to be happy. You're going to be happy on purpose. And, there's a lot of things that can kind of disrupt our happiness in life. But when you learn to anticipate and reframe these things that come into our life that are kind of unpredictable, then you are not going to be facing every day from a state of chaos.
Right.
You're going to just anticipate and know ahead of time, this is what I'm going to do. You're going to practice. It's just like, riding a bike. You know, in the beginning, it's going to be real rough, but once you learn how to do it, then you can ride a bike any day, all day long.
And also, when you get to that place where you can ride a bike any day, all day long, you're also able to ride that bike even when the wind is blowing really hard, right? If you're out there on
Mm-hmm.
a gusty day when you're first learning, it might knock you over. But once you really have it down and you know how to ride a bike like second nature, then the wind is okay. It's like it might be cold, it might be miserable, but you can ride your bike. So bringing that into real life, it's like being able to hold the both and. I can be in the middle of some difficult, painful, challenging circumstances right now, and I can choose to find bits of happiness. I can be experiencing grief and loss and sadness right now, and I can
Mm-hmm.
choose to hold space for little bits of joy in there at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, I love that because we all know that life is not always at the top. It's
Right.
an up and down. It's like a roller coaster. In my curriculum, we talk about that. It's like a roller coaster. And if you're always up here screaming and yelling and having a great old time and all your energy and you're so excited, you're going to wear out.
Mhm.
And if you're way down at the bottom and you're depressed and you're nauseated and things are not working well, then you're going to have problems.
Yeah.
So you've got to learn how to kind of even it out.
Yeah.
And, don't live your life as a roller coaster. And I did that for a lot of years, up and down, up and down. And it's because a lot of times we are relying on external things to validate who we are or our worth, and it just sets you up for a really miserable life if you can't figure that out.
It really does, going back to what we started off talking about is wearing our roles and titles as our identity. And there's that
Mm,
external validation, right? Because if I don't feel that I am good enough somehow, if I feel like I'm deficient in somehow, well, I'm terrified other people might see that. So I'm going to build this mask that I get to hide behind and say, hey, this is me. This is who I am. I have this accomplishment because that's who I am. So what you're saying now is that might be who you needed to believe you were, but there's an invitation to look beneath that mask and see what's been there all along. So now let's
hmm.
talk about we've laid that foundation. We're building new patterns on purpose with intention because we're recognizing, oh, that's who I am. That's who I choose to be. Now, what does that life look like from that place, from that self-perception?
Right. Well, it looks like a more healthy life. It looks like a life that has boundaries in there. They're flexible boundaries, but they're in there because now we know what we need and what we don't need in our life because we've spent the time figuring it out. And being able to prevent burnout is how, why we want to have flexible boundaries, because we can't just keep going without being able to set a limit on ourselves. I mean, sometimes people think boundaries are only for, facing outward toward other people, but really you sometimes have to set boundaries on your own self because you fall back into those patterns that we talked about that you had just recognized as being kind of what keeps you off balance. And
Mhm.
then you kind of fall right back into it, maybe when you're busy or it's a real hectic time in your life, and you fall back to what's familiar.
Yeah.
And you want to, in order for you to stay in a space where you have that calm and you're in control, you do need to, like I mentioned a little bit ago, have those anchor moments built in, sort of like non-negotiables,
Mhm.
so that you can continue to live in self-acceptance and to be able to face life the way you need to face it in order to feel happy and content.
And you're talking about building resilience.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What all goes into that? I wonder if you can dig into that a little bit more. So boundaries, would you say boundaries are part of the resilience?
Yeah, I would say boundaries is part of the resilience. Your day-to-day practices. Um, and you think about this at work too. You have certain routines and things you do at work that are expected when you get there, and you have to do the same things over and over again. Usually, most jobs are like that. In
Mhm.
order for you to keep things on an even keel, you have certain things you need to do. Well, it's the same thing in our own life. In order to protect who we are and protect this space of calm and acceptance that we have built for ourselves, you've got to practice doing it.
Mhm.
And that is the best way for us to protect our energy, is to make sure that we practice what we preach, you know, and we move forward in that respect, learning how to just take responsibility for our happiness and our identity.
Learning to take responsibility. We're not taught to look at it like that. So that's a very fresh perspective.
Mm. Yeah, and it's interesting because we often feel like we don't take responsibility for our happiness because we are relying on external things to make us happy or to make us feel accepted or to make us feel successful or like we've accomplished something. And when we change all that and it comes from the inside out, then we are responsible for our own happiness
Mhm.
because we are just getting rid of all that confusion that happens. Because let's say you think about this, I don't know if you've ever had a job where you got a new boss, same job, new boss.
Mhm.
Uh, that rocks the boat
Yes.
big time. And if you don't have a foundation and feel comfortable in what you're doing and being intentional and purposeful, then everybody gets all worked up
Mhm.
because there's a new boss, you know? And if you just stick to the routine, that's how you're going to move forward. It's the same way in your own personal life. Building those anchor moments in your life and then stick with it.
Yeah. So before we were recording this episode, you and I were chatting just a bit, and you talked about you were breaking up human being into human and being. I'm
Mm.
wondering if you could say more about that. Something you just said made me think of that.
Yeah, when we talk about the elements of being, so there is a difference between, we're all human, as we know, but our personality, our desires, our own being, what our spiritual person part of us actually, and being able to get in there and explore that, because all of our lives we've explored the human part of us. No one is inside of us to be able to explain you on the interior, the being part of you. And that's where it comes into having to do it on your own. and take it as it's almost like an exploration, like you're going on an expedition, because the element of who you are, your mind, your body, your relationships, you're looking at it from the inside out instead of the outside in. So the human part is looking at it from the outside in. The being part is the inside.
Right.
And that is where it gets transformed
Mm.
because we're seeing things from our perspective as opposed to seeing things from everybody else's perspective.
Which reminds me of what you were just saying about same job, new boss. If I know who I am and I am solid in that, then I also know my job. I'm just going to keep doing my job and recognize that the energy of this new boss, their difference, it's all going to just level out. I don't need to
Hmm.
question who I am.
No, no, you don't start all over. That's, but a lot of people do. I mean, in the workplace, when you get a new boss, or we used to get a new principal at our school,
Huh?
I mean, everything was in a tizzy for
Yeah.
months
Yeah.
when the new person came in. And in my setting, I worked in special education, so I was kind of in a room away from all the regular education, and I was glad
Hmm.
because I wasn't involved in all of that politics and chaos and conflict of a new principal. I just did what I do every single day and let all that stuff, stay out there because it's not fun.
No, it is
And
not.
sometimes though people thrive on that chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not that kind of a person that thrives on chaos. I like things to be, on an even keel,
Hmm.
and they don't stay that way. Life is not that way, but I can be that way on the inside, and that's what helps me to navigate what's going on the outside.
That's exactly it. And it reminds me also of what you were saying about taking personal responsibility. So, from my perspective as a trauma recovery coach, I know that, same job, new boss, same school, new principal. It's this feeling of, is this new person safe? Am I safe with this new person? Is my job safe with this
Mm,
person? Is the way my peers and colleagues view me safe with this new person? And you just don't know what to expect. But when we know who we are, then even if our job is threatened, even if the way other people see us might be threatened, if our reputation might be threatened, when we know who we are, we can still choose to live life the way that we want. We can still choose that life of authenticity, even if it
hmm
means having some grief with a lost job or lost relationships.
hmm hmm Yep, you're able to navigate, and it's like you said on the bike, when the wind starts blowing, you know how to lean into it now
Mm,
and to keep going and not be thrown completely off. Or if you do get thrown completely off, you know how to just get right back up and keep going. And that's sort of what the elements of being are, being self-aware, being well within your body, taking care of your health. Um, Understanding where you stand as a person as opposed to, a relationship, and then your circumstances or what's happening around you, understanding that happens around you, not to you.
yes. Yeah, that's a powerful.
And yeah, yeah. And then just knowing that when it all is said and done, you can overcome.
Right. Cindy, you have a gift for our listeners that I'm really excited to hear more about. Tell me about your Boundaries Breakthrough Bundle.
Yes. Oh, this is really about because I was the queen of multitasking. And over time, and there's research out there too that talks about this multitasking and how it really kills brain cells. So this boundaries breakthrough is just really an approach to setting intentional boundaries for you and how you work, for high achievers, people that are always multitasking, and it's a Zen filled approach
Mm.
to getting things done. So it is a workbook, and there's some modules that go along with it, and it helps you to fine tune where you want your focus to be. And it kind of gives you a balance boost because it's helping you to be able to set these clear boundaries for yourself and for others. And when you do that, it's going to increase productivity, help improve your work-life harmony. It reduces stress, and it really can enhance your focus and your concentration. So that's what this is. It's like a mini course. It's a few modules and a workbook,
Mm.
and it is something for people to utilize.
And it sounds powerful and well-rounded, and what an incredible gift. So I want our listeners to definitely check that out. We'll link to it in the show notes because that sounds just perfect.
Good.
And
Yeah, because when we talk about everything that we've talked about today,
mhm.
really setting the boundaries so that you can put what's most important to you first. And so this is kind of like a beginner course, you know, on digging in and becoming more self-aware.
Oh, that's wonderful. And we can all, I love that. What did you call it? A boost.
Yeah, a balance boost.
Balance boost. Who doesn't need a balance boost? That's perfect. Where can our audience
Good.
find you?
They can find me in several different places, but I mostly am on Facebook. And I have a Facebook community called Essentials for Peace and Balance. It's been up and running for a number of years. And that is where most people connect with me and reach out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And before we end our conversation today, I wonder if you have any parting words for our listeners.
Well, I think my parting words are to let boundaries and focus shape your path.
Mm,
Let boundaries and focus shape your path. Don't let other people shape your path.
that's perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today, Cindy.
Thank you, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Becoming and Belonging. I'd love to hear from you. What was your biggest takeaway from today's episode? Share your thoughts, reflections, any questions that came up. You can connect on social media or leave a comment wherever you're tuning in to keep the conversation going. If you found this episode meaningful, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might benefit from it. Until next time, keep growing, keep healing, and remember, you belong here.